Afternoon, good morning, good evening, good night, wherever you are. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Peter Swain. You're watching Hack Mankind. If you didn't already know that, then I don't know what's going on in the world. But today, my job, apart from the obvious interruptions when I feel like I want to talk, is to introduce Michael Smikun. Michael, over to you.
Hello, Peter. So again, thank you as usual. I appreciate very much you creating this platform for us on Hack Mankind, helping people to get through, the challenges of this COVID-19, post-COVID-19 universe. And so yeah, it's just, again, want to honor you for putting this together and helping all these folks out. Again, I am Michael Smikun from Gladwell, Your Relentless Guardian, helping you to shape and influence results. And I am joined by one of my partners, Jeff Greyber, who is a tremendous powerhouse in the space of helping victims who have been harmed in any form of, personal property casualty issues that they have. If a hailstorm hits your house and destroys your roof and potentially damages your loved ones, potentially damages your personal property and things of that nature, Jeff has been a dominant force in that field forever and ever and ever. And so in terms of everything that's been going on, with COVID-19, he has been a pillar, a leader in the community of trying to find ways for businesses to stay afloat, finding ways to find business interruption, coverage, finding ways to make sure that they have access to funding to keep small businesses alive. And so I'm just so thankful for Jeff in joining us and leading that march and helping us to put together the kinds of content that people are looking for now when they have so many questions, and giving the universe and this world of Hack Mankind access to someone of his sophistication. So Jeff, how's it going, brother?
It's going well, Mike and Peter. Thank you for having me. Good morning, afternoon, evening, whatever might apply to everybody out there. Yeah, it's going well. Getting through the Groundhog Days from the good old Bill Murray old school movie. Hopefully most people catch that reference. Getting through the Groundhog Days of coronavirus. Doing all right.
That is unbelievable. So Jeff, one of the things that we do here is we give people access to ask whatever questions they may have, whatever challenges they may face. And I know that you've spearheaded, actively trying to help businesses, avoid the crippling effects of governmental and county executive shutdowns of their businesses, essentially cutting them off from revenue sources and essentially impacting them to the point where they have to potentially shut down, which contributes substantially to a lot of unemployment by people. So can you tell us a little bit about what has been your perspective of COVID-19 and what kind of impact it's had on businesses?
Well, it has certainly highlighted the U.S. Marines motto of adapt and overcome. We all, in any sector of life or profession, need to be willing to evolve during these times in particularly. I'd suggest that should always be our mantra, really, but COVID-19 has certainly highlighted that. As you pointed out, Mike, in the introductory comments, and I would point out to the audience, I largely have been an insurance-related lawyer for 14 years of my practice. All types of insurance, property, life, health, disability, long-term care, you name it. And what I've been trying to do, along with you, Mike, and others at Calgie Law, is help business owners navigate insurance claims, in particularly business interruption or business income claims, as they would be called, in the COVID-19 world, before having to tap into federal funding, the unsavory prospect of laying folks off. We, including myself at Calgie Law, have really been exploring for folks as a courtesy intake analysis whether or not insurance policies already in their possession, already in place, already paid for, would provide the monetary boost that's needed for the business to stay afloat and keep employees on staff. And part and parcel with those insurance assessments, we've also really been keeping our finger on the pulse of state legislative efforts concerning insurance coverages for business interruption claims and whether or not virus exclusions would come into play. And I'm not sure how much detail you want me to get into on the insurance assessment, but for now, I'll leave it at that, just as a general overlay.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question, Jeff. Like that's tremendous effort on your part, right? Because these contracts that most business owners have are pretty written in such a way that insulates insurance companies from having to pay their the benefits out, although they've been graciously accepting your premiums during that interim, and it has benefited them substantially. But let me ask you a question before we even get into all that. Tell me a little bit about you. Like, why did you decide to ultimately become a lawyer? Like, what was it that drove you into that profession, into that field? Did you always want to be a lawyer, or did you someday decide this is for me, this is what I want to do?
Well, ever since I can remember, I wanted to be in a position of power from which to help others. And so a couple professions that I always tossed around in my head during my formative years and before actually having to make, college decisions as to what classes and degrees you take and obtained, I was thinking doctor or lawyer. I felt that those were two places in our society where you could have great impact and great power in the endeavor that is helping others. I'm a firm believer that in that endeavor, you got to be in things for the right reason, mainly for the advancement of God-given gifts to help others. You got to be driven, you got to be aggressive, and you have to be resilient. And I think, all of those qualities or traits or characteristics squared nicely with the practice of law, and really things like drive, aggression, and resilience. How much more apropos could those traits be now during these trying times that are COVID-19? So always wanted to be in a power position to help others, in it for that reason, to help others. And during college, I interned with some doctors and interned with some lawyers, and ultimately determined that a suit rather than scrubs were for me. Although, folks, I apologize, during these Corona times, you see me in a t-shirt right now and a long beard, but I promise I really am a lawyer.
That is too funny. So, Jeff, let me ask you a question. You have chosen an area of the practice where you are constantly dealing with people when they have experienced, catastrophe, right? Personally, sometimes professionally. And there's easier ways for you to achieve the results that you wanted from humanity than to choose to deal with people who are not, victimized or not victims, but certainly been put in a position where they have the underhand, right? They don't have, all the skill sets. They're the underdog in this situation. Like, what was it that drove you to put yourself into such a stressful side of the field in terms of dealing with people who are injured or harmed that are looking for a champion who can help them in probably some of their darkest days?
It's an incredibly stressful practice. There's doubtless umpteen other avenues of the law, which would result in far less gray hairs, which are even more evident in the long beard right now, but I don't know. During law school and summer internships and whatnot, I really thought hard about what area of the law, as you said, Mike, would assist those during their most trying times, during their biggest struggles. And while the insurance world is certainly not the only legal world wherein you can really impact folks, it cried out to me. People with insurance claims are hurting, whether a property has been destroyed by a hurricane and they're without a roof over their head, literally, with small children running around and mold exposure and whatnot, whether someone's on their hospital bed with cancer or any other ailment, or disabled and no longer capable of continuing on with the occupation that they trained for and they love so much. And insurance companies, multi-billion-dollar companies, are hurting people with claim delay, claim denials, et cetera, et cetera. And so I was fortunate to land, as you know, a couple summer internships that dealt with insurance, and it just really cried out to me as a particular sector of the legal profession where perhaps the greatest impact could be felt for human beings during their darkest times.
So
no knock to other practices, sports agency, transactional type law, that's all great. Society needs it. But I didn't really feel the hurt of people in those practices.
Yeah.
And I wanted to help people with their hurt as most directly as I possibly could.
And so as part of, the access that you now have and the reach that you now have in this moment, you have an amazing cross section of people. You have individuals, who, may have sustained damage to their homes, may have sustained damage to their property, some people may be in a position where, there's doctors and insurance companies knocking at their door for unpaid, medical bills, for insurance policies that they thought, had covered them for all instances of their losses, their healthcare challenges. And you have businesses who are, scared out of their minds. They've operated on tight margins, but have been, successful in continuing to sustain, jobs available for people, their own employment, their own families. Like, what would you think is probably the 2 or 3 best pieces of advice you can give them to make sure that they're doing everything they can to protect themselves when dealing with insurance companies to try to optimally or maximally collect on the benefits that they're entitled to? Like, what types of things should they be thinking about when putting together their cases, when putting together their information, whether they're doing it themselves or using an attorney?
Yeah, shy of enlisting the services of an attorney or other professionals in the field, like a public adjuster in the property insurance context, or a social worker perhaps in the health insurance context, shy of enlisting professional assistance, keep excellent records of everything that has occurred in relation.
What does that mean? Like, what does that look like? Are they just taking a couple of photographs here and there, or whatever their damage are? Are they making a couple of photocopies of documents? Are they, taking pictures of letters that they have? Like, what does that mean, in terms of what does a great file look like? What do those documentation actually look like?
It would certainly depend on what type of insurance claim you have. I've given numerous seminars over the years entitled "What Should Be in Your Claim File?" And that seminar, I've got different versions of that. If you're talking about a health insurance claim or a property insurance claim, how to augment your chances of claim approval without having to enlist an attorney. Or alternatively, if you, unfortunately for you, had to retain an attorney, augmenting the attorney's chances of success vis-a-vis the wonderful file that you've accumulated. Yes, in property insurance claims, Mike, photos and videos are key. They're gold, absolute gold. To the extent that you're at the property while the loss is actually occurring, you're riding out a hurricane, or a pipe breaks, and you can capture the live footage of the loss itself, great. Or get yourself at the loss scene immediately after the occurrence. Before, during, and after photos and videos would probably be your number one tool towards augmenting your chances of claim approval as it would pertain to a property insurance claim. As it would pertain to a health insurance claim, making sure that your providers, your doctors, your hospitals are keeping adequate records of your condition, your treatments, your diagnosis, your prognosis, because the health insurance company is absolutely going to be looking at those types of records from the get-go. And, you know, you as the patient or the patient's loved one or caretaker, not to the point of being to a pest, but almost pestering your providers and your facilities to make sure that they are adequately capturing conditions, treatments, prognosis, diagnosis. As for disability insurance, I would think that, again, medical records, making sure that your medical records are in place are key, but you would also supplement that with occupational capacity reports, FCE, functional capacity evaluations, to further prove and demonstrate that you unfortunately can no longer continue on with your occupation. Of course, there's about a dozen other types of documents within each kind of insurance claim that would help you get your claim approved. But that, again, is kind of just a general overview as to good records keeping. Moreover, when dealing with an insurance company on any kind of claim, do your level best to put everything in writing. The old insurance saying goes, if it's not in writing, it didn't happen. Phone calls with insurance companies, not worth much. Site visits from property insurance adjusters, for example, not worth much unless you're documenting the heck out of it, memorializing the heck out of it. Get things in writing. Even if you had to have a phone call or a property visit, you follow that with a letter memorializing your encounter with the insurance company that day. So always have things in writing as well, which is part and parcel with maintaining a nice claim file.
Yeah. And it's funny because as you're saying these things, you know, this is just, it's good advocacy, right? It's aggressive advocacy. And the truth of it is there's an old proverb. There's an old proverb that says, you know, have faith in God, but tie up your camels, right? Have faith in God, but row away from the rocks. And so, you know, it's important to remember that you are your best advocate, right? And you need to be aggressively pursuing it. And Jeff is a tremendous attorney, right? And produces tremendous results. But his ability to produce a successful result is going to depend tremendously on how aggressively you advocate for yourself before he gets involved. And so some of the best results that you could produce is not really having, you know, not mistrusting people, but advocating for yourself and being aggressive. And like, you know, there's Peter could talk to this as well, but a common theme that we see when talking with people on this panel is that in a lot of different situations, people can avoid a whole lot of pain, a whole lot of hurt, a whole lot of delay if they were just to become more aggressive advocates for themselves. But in a lot of different ways, they kind of don't do that because they feel potentially that it's impolite. Like if you're talking to someone on the phone and they say something to you, well, the polite thing to do is say, oh, okay, great, that sounds wonderful. What Jeff is advocating for may seem to be impolite, which is, hey, this is what you said to me on the telephone and I'm confirming it. You're not calling them a liar. You're just protecting the record and making sure that you're doing things to advocate for yourself to produce the best possible result. What's been your experience with cases where people are aggressive advocates for themselves, Jeff, versus people who are more default to truth, trusting and assuming that the right thing is going to happen?
Sure, I'll get to that after endorsing or punctuating something you just said, which is I find that, especially in older generations, I hate to say it, but an unwarranted trust. Folks, insurance companies, by and large, are not there to approve your claim, or at the very least, not there to give you 100 cents on the dollar. Their modus operandi, by and large, is delay, deny, defend. So although you must at all times remain professional and cordial and otherwise just be a good person, friendly. Do not trust that the insurance company folks are your advocates. They are the advocates of the folks that stroke their paychecks. They are not your advocate. You must be proactive. You must, as Mike said, without coming off as rude and whatnot, never assume that something's going to make its way into the record that's going to help your claim. You see to it that helpful materials absolutely make their way into the written record. Do not trust that it's going to pan out that way unless you proactively do something about it. So, Mike, to your question, naturally, good record keepers corresponds, in my experience, with good claim results. And a lot of the time, a lot of the cases I'm getting, the records stink. And I rehabilitate it and win it. But a lot of the times, the reason that these claims are even getting to the attorney in the first place is because the policyholder, the insured, or the claimant hasn't been proactive enough, hasn't been thorough enough, hasn't been diligent enough. So please, 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 certainly, folks, take these measures on your own. Let's go with, instead of unwarranted trust, with a guarded skepticism, let's say. Let's say that you go into your claim figuring your claim's going to get denied. That's probably the best mindset. An unfortunate mindset that the industry's that way, that you pay a good solid premium for your insurance coverage, and insurance is supposed to be a form of public trust, but it's not. Go in there assuming your claim's going to get denied, and try to be like your own PI, your own private investigator, your own detective. Use your common sense, formulate a nice file, put everything in writing, and that is going to absolutely spike your chances of claim approval shy of a professional. Or if it comes to a professional like me, increase the chances of me being able to get your successful result quicker. I'm going to get you a successful result, but if you come to me with a lovely file, it'll be quicker. And it will be, leaning more towards 100 cents on the dollar as opposed to 50 cents on the dollar.
I see Peter actively trying to intervene, and I love these. What's up, brother?
Well, there's three things I wanted to bring to this. One, this isn't rocket science for people listening to this. Write it all down and then call somebody like Jeff. The end. If you don't like conflict and you don't like confrontation, you don't like representing yourself in that way, that's why people like Jeff and Mike exist. If you hand them a written record, you hand them the photos and say, this is what happened, that's what they're there for. You don't need to go through that if you don't want to go through it. Number one. Number two, somebody is going to pay, right? If you had your car written off, or God forbid you're in a personal injury situation, either the insurance company is going to pay, or you're going to pay, or your family is going to pay. Somebody is going to pay. Somebody has to get you back to the state you're in, whether it's medical care, whether it's buying you an alternate car, whether it's paying for the time you're not at work. Somebody's going to have to pay. So by not taking that conflict on, what you're actually saying is, hey, I'm okay for my family and friends to have to pick up the slack because I can't, I'm sorry, and I'm allowed to say this, you guys aren't, I can't be bothered to represent myself and have that conflict. That's not the right mindset. But number three, me and the insurance companies are probably never going to work together if any of this footage ever comes out. And I think that's probably a bad thing. What would you guys say if I told you, I want to reimagine the world of insurance to say that every insurance company, and I know America is staunchly anti-socialist, so I know this isn't going to go down well, so hear it before you react, that you create a government body to handle is the claim paid or not? And every insurance company has to pay a tax effectively to fund this company. And this company is then maintained as a black box. So when an insurance company sells you a policy, they register that policy with the people that say yes or no, I can't remember their names, their job titles, and they have to decide. Because to me, the problem is that it's a cat, as you said, Jeff, their default is to not pay, because that's how they get paid. Right? People on this need to know that some insurance companies bonus the people that handle those claims to say no. Right? Your success as an adjuster, is that the right job title?
Adjuster, underwriter.
An adjuster underwriter, the money they take home at the end of the year directly correlates to how many people they say no to. Right? That should be a mic drop in your head. These people are literally working, not all of them, are working towards a place where their career, their take home, their money is dependent on how many times they get to say no, not how many times they get to say yes.
So Peter, let me jump in here, and I will say we have no problem saying all the things that you just said. Jeff, if I'm on a blacklist of working with insurance companies, Jeff is like, he is America's most wanted, like top 10, like face, like mugshot on each of the adjusters' desk to look out for them when they go.
That's Mike. That's why I grew the beard, man. I'm just way too recognized. I got to go undercover.
So Peter, I think there's something so critical. So I appreciate your question. I don't want you to think that I'm dodging it, and I have a sense that Jeff was probably thinking something similar. Not many people fully understand or appreciate the business of insurance, and the business of insurance is a vehicle to access cash now, to invest today, to make money off of it today, and until that money needs to be utilized to pay a claim. So the business of insurance companies, and there's states that have very potent laws about bad faith, and their mere existence is probably why insurance companies eventually do the right thing when pushed into that direction ultimately. But many people don't fully understand that the money doesn't go, the premiums go in and sit in a bank account somewhere. The premiums go in and they're invested, and they make the insurance company a tremendous amount of money. And so that's why the business of insurance operates the way it does, and why insurance companies are terrified about people like Jeff, because he understands that, and he knows how to point out that their decisions are entirely based on investment choices to perpetuate and to ensure they hold on to the money as long as possible, because your money is making them money. And so creating a quasi-governmental agency, or even a complete full governmental agency, I think has inherent problems, because the business of insurance exists because it's lucrative. And if governments had to pick up the bill and pay out claims just on premiums, I think that governmental agency would have a tremendous amount of problems without massive subsidiaries.
Oh, let's say I'm Allstate, for example, and I'm not picking on any specific insurer, and I don't know them well enough in the States to even accurately pick on someone. What I'm saying is Allstate collect the money from you, Mike, for your insurance every month. Happily, thank you very much. And then, God forbid, something happens. But instead of calling Allstate to make a claim, you call Bob over here. And Bob has your file, and he has the policy. And Bob, without any bonuses, without any incentives, makes a yes-no decision, looks at that policy, looks at the thing, and goes yes or no. And if it's yes, you need to pay out, Allstate are then legally obliged to pay out. So the cash relationship between you and Allstate is maintained. They take your money for insurance and they pay out when they should pay out. And Allstate pay Bob per claim that Bob handles. So Bob's ability to make a decision is now not financially remunerated in any way, shape, or form. It's a total black box. And I don't even want Bob to know whether this is Allstate or Geico. I just want them to know, here's the claim, here's the policy, yes or no. And Allstate are then legally obliged to follow the decision that's laid out by Bob's Black Box.
So there kind of exists that system. I'm gonna say two things. So there kind of already exists that system in certain contexts. And Jeff, I think you're familiar with what I'm about to say, but in the commercial insurance context, there is an appeals process that exists that is mandatory for insurance companies to institute, where there's an internal appeals process. And the highest level of that appeals process goes to an independent, allegedly, an independent agency to make that determination. If that independent agency, allegedly, makes that determination and says the services or the benefits should be paid for or not, then the insurance companies have the choice to say, yes, we're going to follow that, or we're going to file a lawsuit that says, no, we're not going to. But there kind of already exists that, and I don't know whether or not that's substantially helped in addressing some of the issues that exist in the commercial insurance context. And not many people would know this, but unless your claim falls under a specific state statute, meaning like a no-fault auto insurance state statute or a state workers' compensation statute that provides benefits for injured workers, almost all policies in the United States are governed by federal law under ERISA, right? And that's where Jeff is really well versed in collecting monies on behalf of medical providers and injured individuals who have not received their full benefits from commercial policies. That's the first thing that I want to say, and I'm going to turn it to Jeff as well, but I want to say a second thing. The reason that Jeff is as effective as he is, and I feel like, Peter, you kind of like, you gave me a softball on this one. The reason that Jeff is as effective as he is that the way you tell a story changes the result. If I came to you and I said 25 things, 25 facts to you, and I gave you no context as to why those facts were important, I didn't make sure that you understood which facts were more important than others, which ones are weighty, which ones are irrelevant, and help to organize those thoughts for you, eventually you would end up in a place where you'd be desensitized towards the receipt of information, and you would unconsciously pass those facts through your own prism and make conclusions based on your own set of beliefs, guidelines, and values. And so Bob, right, is one person. And Bob may believe deep down inside, unconsciously, that victims should be believed no matter what, whereas Greg, right, or Fred, or whoever, believes that people inherently are liars and they shouldn't be trusted, period. And so you end up with this non-adversarial system where individuals are allowing their subjective beliefs to control their decision-making of the facts. With an adversarial system, such as the one that Jeff operates in, our justice system, you have one person on one side who advocates vehemently as to why benefits should be paid. And then you have somebody on the other side who argues vehemently why they shouldn't be paid. And both, you assume, are masters or close to mastery in making sure to highlight the facts that are critical for the fact finder to find, and the other side highlighting the facts that they think the fact finder should believe is to be most important. And it's that adversarial system that makes all the difference in the world. At least to me, we have the best justice system, but it has its flaws. But Jeff is as successful. I know, Peter, it's okay. We have the best justice system in the world, right? It's got its problems, but it is the best justice system. But it's that adversarial nature that allows us to make sure that to the best degree possible, there's always challenges, right? With objective truth versus subjective truth and adjudicated truth versus objective truth, right? There's all these challenges. but it allows us to get as close to the truth as possible. There's always problems with these things, but I think if you put it into a place of a lack of transparency in one person's hands without the adversarial nature to it, I think you're going to produce inferior results most of the time, though sometimes you'll get better results. I guess, Jeff, what's your perspective on that?
Well, so I think what Peter's getting at with his suggestion is well-founded. I'm not really sure what it would look like. I've never thought of it before, ever, until now. So on the spot, I'm not sure how I might predict what a government orchestrated batch of claim decision makers might look like, how that might work. But Mike's absolutely right. That I think what Peter's getting at is you got to do your best in the claim decision-making process to somehow get yourself to a neutral. And as Mike is pointing out, you know, that exists in the health insurance arena to some extent. If perhaps your claim is denied for medical judgment reasons, you know, hey, doctor, that surgery was not medically necessary, or hey, surgeon, that procedure was experimental. You know, there are systems in place whereby you can invoke what's called an IRO, or an external review with an IRO, an independent review organization, which is supposed to be a neutral, not tied to the carrier with the financial underlying motivations. In the property insurance world, a device that I find works very well is appraisal, the appraisal process, whereby the carrier, the insurance company, appoints an adjuster to lobby for their lowballing. The insured has their advocate adjuster, often called a public adjuster. And the two of them, if need be, select what's called a neutral umpire. And so you end up with a panel of three assessing a property insurance loss. Naturally, the carrier's adjuster most times is going to be on the low end. The public adjuster will be advocating the Rolls-Royce repair. The insurance company will be advocating the 1987 used Chevrolet repair. No disrespect to Chevy. I drive a Chevy truck. And then the umpire comes in, the neutral comes in, and makes the decision after he or she has considered the two adjusters' portfolios. That type of paneled claimed decision-making structure, a panel of three, I find works very well. I'm a big believer in the appraisal process when it comes to property insurance. So I think the key is, Peter, yeah, at some point, your only fair shake in the insurance world, 8 times out of 10, because of the underlying financial motivations, is going to come in the form of a neutral. Now, to the extent you can get that into a neutral posture pre-suit with like an appraisal or a external review, great. Otherwise, you're banking on the judge or the jury being your neutrals eventually. I don't know. I don't know what it would look like having a government orchestrated batch of claim decision makers, but there are safeguards in place already to try to achieve neutrality in the claim decision making process. There were so many points that you guys touched on that I wish I could drill down on. I'm not sure how limited we are in time. I mean, you know, other things that ensure positive results, a good shake at the claim adjustment, are good state bad faith laws. Your policyholders, your claimants, your insureds are better off in states like Florida, states like California, where there is some teeth in the law, punishment, punitive damages, if it's discovered that an adjuster is incentivized with year-end bonuses predicated on claim lowballings. Florida has great bad faith laws. Florida statute 624.155, 626.9541. Fee shifting is also incredibly important to have. Not all states have it. Florida 627.428. That's more teeth for insurance companies not wanting to screw with the policyholder pre-suit because they're going to get punished afterwards by attorneys like me with statutory teeth in place. New York is a terrible state to have an insurance claim by and large. Virginia is a bad state by and large. States that lack in statutory protections designed to protect the consumer. Geez, there were so many other things you guys touched on, but that's my response as to a couple of the topics that came up.
That's amazing. And thank you, Jeff. I realized something when you said about the best legal system, right? And I'm going to put myself out there, and I apologize to everybody that doesn't know me. For people that do know me, I have a desire to live in the States. I love the United States of America. I love my own country as well. And I'm saying this because there is a larger percentage of people in America that are more insular and don't see what I'm about to say as a truth. There is certain things where two conflicting things can both be true. So, and I'm going to take healthcare as an example here, and I'm going to say that America believes, as a whole, that it has one of the best healthcare systems in the world. People in Britain would say, how can you possibly say that when you leave 50 million, 60 million people behind in the equation? Right? And what it comes down to, and the reason I'm saying this because of that black box Bob suggestion I had, because I realized by both your answers what it is. What I'm saying is I would rather get a 70 percentile for 100% of the people, which is a British approach. We have our NHS provides a better average health to 100% of our population. But if something went seriously wrong and I had the money, well, I would come to you guys to get treatment. If I was like, I need this solved, this is a real problem, then the American system trumps the British system every time over. And I think it's almost the same in every single aspect we look at. I think it's probably the same in insurance as well. I think we probably handle 100% of the claims, in quotes, fairer than America does. But I think we probably leave behind the 30, 40% extremists that doesn't get dealt with to the same degree America would deal with it. I don't know why that's important, but it seems to me when you said we have the best, and I'm like, no, you don't. That's totally, you can't do punitive damage of 100. Someone can't earn tens of millions of dollars by somebody else's mistake. We've spoken about this before, Mike. But I also understand how it's relevant and apt and important because it keeps people in check. It's a fascinating dichotomy between two systems, both of which are very advanced, both of which are the envy of the world. You know, anybody would say that the British healthcare and the American healthcare system are some of the best in the world, and yet they are fundamentally different. And I just think it's fascinating when anyone's looking at anything in their life, in their business, to go, wow, okay, my approach isn't necessarily the only approach. There are other approaches which have merit as well. It's fascinating, absolutely fascinating.
Look, I mean, Peter, you know, there's a simple answer to your question. Ours has to be the best because we had yours and then we updated it to the new model, which has a lot more features than the old British exchequer, you know, Lord Coker days of the law. Now, we took all the good stuff, right? There's a lot of parts of the English justice system that were really good, right? Our chancery courts, which are designed to provide remedies and relief that aren't money damages, come from you guys, right? It literally came from the King's Court, right? So people who couldn't have access to the justice system in England would go, there's no relief for me on my problem. So they would literally go to the King, and the King would hear their plight and go, here's what I order, done. And then the King became King's Court. King's Court then became the Exchequer, and the Exchequer was then evolved into the Courts of Chancery. So our Courts of Chancery exist because of what you guys created, right? But then we said, you know, it would be great if our courts of law could deal with these issues as well, and then you have the merger of the courts of law and equity, and now you have judges who can do both, award money damages and give other types of remedies. So we just did it better, right? Like that's just a better way to do it.
So my response is to that. There was once a summit of innovation, and Bill Gates stood up first, and then it was the CEO of General Motors stood up second. And Bill Gates stood up and said, and literally took a shot at the CEO of GM. He's like, in the last 5 years, we've invented this, we've updated this, we've updated that, da 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 da. And how can you be sitting here as the CEO of General Motors when a car still has four wheels, still has a steering wheel, still has an ignition, still burns gas, and yet you're here at an innovation summit? And this, I will use the CEO of GM's response to respond to you, Mike. The CEO of GM said, thank you very much, Bill, for everything you just said. All I'd like to say is we don't have to reboot our cars every 100 miles. And sat back down.
Mic dropper.
Right, so we only have 5 minutes left. I want to do a final and then give it back to you because I've had too much of this conversation. The thing I want to say is actually to the insurance companies. And I just want to tell you that the head of the Music Association said technology will never affect us. And then we invented Napster, and then we made that into iTunes, and we slaughtered the profit margins as a tech industry from doing that. The mortgage brokerage industry said technology will never affect us. The Financial Fair Play Act came in, and people bought their mortgages directly, and mortgage brokers seemingly went out of business. The Motion Picture Association said, what happened to the RIAA? That'll never happen to us. And then we started streaming videos and we slaughtered that industry as well. Technology attacks inefficiency. So if insurance companies wish to stay in business and they wish to keep doing what they're doing, they will have to, at some point, adjust their business practices. Because if they don't, the overwhelm of technology will take you. There will be an AI-based insurance agency within the next 5 to 10 years, which makes a 2.5% to 3.5% margin. And it's quite happy making a 2.5%, 3.5% margin, and it will slaughter everybody else that's sitting there earning ridiculous money.
Peter, I agree. I agree with you, and I'll tell you what. For better or worse, however people feel about Malcolm Gladwell, but Malcolm Gladwell just put out a book. I think it was called Talking to Strangers. And in Talking to Strangers, there was an analysis done on the judiciary and their decision-making when it came time to figure out who should be released on probation, right? And there was a pilot project for courts in New York, and they weighed the results of the release of potential recidivists, right, violent offenders, and who is most likely to reoffend again. The artificial intelligence, I think, released recidivists, people who committed another violent act on probation. I think it was less than 5% of the time, whereas judges release recidivists at a much higher rate. I think it was exponentially higher. And a lot of it had to do with the fact that human beings make mistakes, right? Human beings can be lazy. Human beings can be swayed by certain emotions, right? Tears drive people, and people with mismatching personality types, meaning that they're really deep down a sociopath, but their emotional range makes them reveal as if they are sympathetic and remorseful. And then there's people who are remorseful, who are sympathetic, but don't have the kind of emotional range or empathy to know how to connect with people, and they appear to be more dangerous than they really are. So that is already proven to be true. And if COVID-19 has shown us anything, and Peter, I think I mentioned this in every one of our calls and probably every one of my calls, is that COVID-19 is the great revealer. It accelerates trends. And so, bring it on. But I promise you this, Jeff will find a way, because he's that good, to make the computer wrong.
Brilliant. Guys,
either that or I'm going to shift to Calgary Law's Innovation Law Department instead of the insurance.
Yeah, because look, there's a lot of philosophical conversation about self-driving cars. right? Like the trolley dilemma. Are you guys familiar with that? And then we'll wrap up. So
Someone's been watching The Good Place recently.
well, I've never watched it, but I actually read Elon Musk's book. Somebody did a biography of him, and he contributed to it. And the trolley dilemma basically is a question of how do you program a computer to take a person's life, and how does it make decisions about protecting its occupant versus running a person over? You know, is it better to run over a person than a dog? Is it better to run over a child than a person? Is it better to risk the occupant to save a life? And at what percentage does the computer make the decision? So, you know, I'm sure there'll be plenty of cases where companies like Tesla are going to have to defend some of their programming decisions about when the computer makes a decision about taking a person's life. So, to Jeff's credit, we will find a way. You know, if the insurance companies keep doing what they're doing, we will find a way. I have no doubt about that. So I want to give Peter the final word, and I'm going to give Jeff the final word.
As per usual, Mike, I want to thank you for bringing on guests of Jeff's caliber. I hope people have got something from this, whether it's on the legal side or the business side or mindset. Hackmankind is changing literally as of next week. So go to www.hackmankind.com now. There's a blue box, put in your email address, and then we can keep you up to date with everything we're doing and keep bringing you great content from people like Mike and Jeff. Thank you so much.
Amazing. Jeff, final word?
Oh, Mike and Peter, really appreciate you guys having me. For those in the audience who have listened to us today, thank you for your time. And back to that notion of AI claim decision making, I'm cool with it so long as I get to design the software. We mustn't let the insurance industry design the AI. And if we can avoid that, I'm cool with it. Good thought, Peter. Thank you, guys.
That is too funny. So, as usual, Michael Smikun, your relentless guardian, helping you to shape and influence results. Peter, I want to thank you for creating this panel and giving us the opportunity to give access to people who may have questions. Jeff, thank you, brother. I appreciate you coming on such short notice, especially. And truly, I think the beard is epic. So, you know, for everybody watching who think that Jeff should keep the beard at the length that it is, send some hearts out. And whoa, quite an explosion, Jeff. I think the masses approve of your beard.
You know, my daughter, though, when I asked her to give me a kiss on the cheek, and she says, "But you scratch me, Daddy." I don't know. I'm leaning towards trimming it up for that reason alone.
I hear you, but the strangers on Facebook love it, so I'm just putting that out.
All right.
My wife had me grow a beard until there was crumbs, and she's like, get rid of it now.
That's fun.
That is too funny. So again, Jeff, Peter, thank you guys so much. Michael Smikun, your relentless guardian, helping to shape and influence results. Have a good one.
Thanks.
Thank you.